So previously I've talked about tutorialization and how players not knowing what they can do in a game changes the perceived difficulty of the game. So in my game, besides the hint system and before adding the loot goblin mini boss kind of guy, I did something I now kind of regret and added an easy mode, which is something some people requested as well. But I was and still am of the opinion that the issue was generally lackluster communication on the game's part. Meaning, if people had understood the game mechanics better, there would have been much less of a demand for an easy mode. So there's a mechanic in the game that respawns you at the beginning and generates a new dungeon for you whenever you die. The kicker is that you get to keep most of your character progression and any items you had previously stashed for your future self, using dedicated item chutes on the walls of the dungeon. Also, you can perma-learn skills using points you gain from leveling, and I think that stuff is communicated okay. The other kicker is that enemies are scaled by dungeon level, but the XP they give is not. So you die, you're now stronger than you were before, and you can now plow through low-level enemies, but you get big boy XP for it. So you level back up to where you were before you died, and further still. So you leapfrog each time. That's the idea. And that's something that the player has to find out on their own. Like, they should notice enemies dropping quickly, but they may not notice the high XP yield. And for that, they would just have to keep playing. And they may not have the patience for that. Like, you die, you get frustrated, you might rage quit. Anyway, so I did end up putting in that easy mode, which just squashes the difficulty curve, as a bit of a crutch. So someone who just can't quite get the hang of the game mechanics should get through the game like normal on that mode. The problem is, if a player underestimates themselves and preemptively picks the easy mode, they may get a game experience that doesn't include all the aspects of the game, and it lacks tension, right? So I now have this easy mode to balance insufficient communication of the game mechanics, essentially, and now I'm running the risk of giving players an inferior experience. But I didn't want to just take it out because it may still be useful to other players. And, removing features isn't a good look. And I think it's not entirely unlikely that other games had a similar problem. Like, I've noticed more and more games have comments on the difficulty selection screen, like, normal, experience the game the way the developers intended, or something to that effect. Or easy, pick this if you're new to the genre, or computers, or modern life. But you can't make 100% sure players don't pick a difficulty mode that's wrong for them to get the best experience. And then you also have to consider how adaptable each individual game is in terms of difficulty, right? Like what I did in Slasher's Keep was fairly simple, since the game's already made to scale indefinitely, so I made it scale less steeply, and that's the easy mode. But with other games, you may have to modify existing mechanics and structures and stuff to be more accommodating to different difficulty modes. And that's when things can get dicey, right? When you're making changes that impact everyone. But then again, I don't know about other projects, and I don't think you can make definitive judgments about projects that you're not part of. That's one thing I learned from making a big old complicated game. So I'll only speak authoritatively on my own stuff. Now, there's been some chatter on the web in the past couple years about easy modes, so I realize I'm late to the party here. But, you may have heard about games writers failing the simplest tasks in the most basic tutorials, and then complaining that they're not being babied enough. And some even demanded developers add easy modes based on ethical grounds. And, you can go right to heck with that. But it goes to show you may never know for certain what the lowest common denominator is in terms of player skill. But, you have to draw the line somewhere, right? And I'm leaning more and more towards like a devil-may-care attitude in terms of difficulty. Like, I'd rather have a single, crisp difficulty setting and put all my eggs in the communication basket and make sure players understand how the game works, making everything reasonably clear and pacing it out correctly, and, But there's always compromises you have to make, and you never know, and yada yada. Or I might change my mind completely in the future. I don't know. Anyway, here's an ad from my game. Slasher's Keep is a first-person roguelike with a focus on melee combat and loot. It has randomly generated dungeons with orcs, mole rats, and other monsters to fight, lots of loot to find, and a drag-and-drop weapon crafting system. I made it all by my lonesome, and it's available for PC on Steam.